Now, this week, Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull and other Liberal Party power brokers intervened to ensure that Liberal MP Anne Soutmalis did not have to face a pre-selection challenge.
But it follows the defeat of Assistant Minister Jane Prentice at the LNP pre-selection for the Queensland seat of Ryan and widespread criticism of the lack of female representation in the Liberal Party. Well, to discuss this and the news of the week, where we're going to as well, we're talking with Cassandra Goldie, CEO of the Australian Council of Social Services. Good morning.
Yes, good morning both.
And from Canberra, Danita Dawn, CEO of the Master Builders Association. G'day, good to have you here.
Good morning, Dan.
To start off, let's talk about this question of representation. I asked the Minister before whether or not the Prime Minister should be intervening across the board. Let's open it up. What do you think about that?
Well, look, I think it's really important that we've got this public scrutiny. There is a big criticism. Again, the bright light is being shined on how poorly we're doing about female representation in Parliament and, of course, diversity more generally. I mean, we should have a Parliament that fully reflects the community that is represented through that democratic process. We're not where we should be, and I think some serious scrutiny needs to trigger these internal debates within the political parties and firm action taken. We're nowhere near where we should be, and I think we're paying the price for that.
Danita Warren, what do you say to that?
Certainly we need more women in Parliament, but equally I agree with Cassandra, we need more diversity in Parliament. And from my experience, I've worked in public policy arena for 25 years. It's really disappointing that we don't still see enough women engaged in the political process. My question is why? I think it's changing. It definitely has changed in the last 5 years. But, you know, I will go to many a dinner and conference, and I'm still one of the few women. And yet that is despite some mentoring and so forth that I do. So the question we really as leaders need to ensure is what are we, both male and female leaders, doing to encourage more women into the political process and to engage more so they see the benefits of being involved. And that it does come at a price though, because it is a 24/7 job. And you need to have commitment by all of you around that politician to ensure that you do have balance. So it's a fraught issue of complexity.
Danita, you know, you say why, and of course we're constantly asking why. Of course, the other question too is how. You know, there is a case of, yesterday we were talking to Pat Conroy and Craig Kelly as well, and Pat Conroy said, well, with the Labor Party there is a quota. Cassandra, would you agree with a quota? Is that something?
Absolutely. I mean, we've been having this debate in this country for decades. We're at the point now where, for example, we've got a majority of the graduates out of university are female. And yet we are still, it's a sort of a glacial pace of change to see that increase, that sort of real equity and representation in Parliament. And so in our experience, the only way you're going to get there is to have very clear obligations, and then it is up to the political parties like a business or an organisation to work out the detail. What are the cultural barriers within that party? What are the structural changes that need to happen in the pre-selection process? And then, of course, as a country, I think we have to look at this question about the culture of relentless 24/7 paced hard work, because all of us are losing out of that one. I don't think this is about women, you know, having to fit into an existing culture. It's about us challenging that overall.
With a quota, and speaking as a woman as well, is that if I was given a particular position, I would want it to be on my merit. On my own hard work, not because I ticked a particular box. What's your view on this, Danita? Let's just get Danita's view.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Look, personally, I don't believe on quotas. I feel that I've achieved on merit. I'm now the first female CEO of an 127-year history organisation where they've never had women in the boardroom before. And do I think that I have ever been discriminated in 25 years? Absolutely not. So my question really is, what are we doing to get more women engaged in the political process, and how are we going to encourage them to do that? And part of my argument is that, you know, and this may well be controversial, but are women having enough discussions in many instances with their partners and their family to support them through this decision making? Too many times we see very good women who, it is assumed once particularly they have children, that they will play that parenting role more so than their partner. And I really do think we need to have that conversation, not only in a workplace, but also culturally in society as well.
And look, as you point out, there is a big challenge with the term quotas. It's emotionally charged. I heard a business leader from Daimler Chrysler just the other day speaking about what they called aspirational targets that were basically a quota by any other name, but taking the emotion out of it. But surely there are practices that are required, like not having gender as part of resumes, and really being a bit more complex about the way that companies, that governance looks at recruitment. What do you make of that?
Well, obviously, a recruitment process is very important. Building and construction is a classic example where we only have 10% of our workforce as women, and I would love to see that increase to 50%. But what we need to do is ensure that those doing the recruiting are using the right language. They've got photos of girls as well as boys in their promotional material, that they look at a broader range of people that they can access. And we are seeing significant change in that space. So do I think we're aiming in the right direction? Absolutely, but it needs to be a holistic approach in a workplace. But I also take Cassandra's point. We can't just focus on a male-female diversity issue here. How many times do we all sit around tables where...
Oh, I think we might have lost Anita for now. But Cassandra, on that point that was just being made there, what do you make of that?
Well, look, I just want to come back to this because often the issue that's thrown up against saying we need clear quotas or, you know, lines in the sand where we must get to is this question that we feel, oh, well, if I get that job, it's because I'm a woman rather than on merit. I just want us to finally put that to bed. I think the reality is if we don't accept that the current system clearly is not on merit. I mean, as I said, we've got clearly women coming out of the education system absolutely at the same pace as men. This is not an issue of merit, it's an issue of culture and of structural barriers that are preventing us from having this kind of equal participation. There is subtle bias that goes on in selection processes. This thing of recruiting people who are like me, the Andrews, which is talked about in the context of CEOs and boards, where we've got more Andrews in those roles than we do have women. This has to stop, and the only way to do that, in our view now, is to say it's enough. We've had the debate. Let's set the targets, let's set the quotas, and get on with the change that we need to see here.
We seem to have lost Danita there, but we'll carry on the conversation with you, Cassandra. You know, one interesting thing, I interviewed Catherine Fox on her book, Stop Fixing Women, and there's a quote where she says, the best chance of breaking up the boys' club are the boys. How do you get the boys to come into this conversation and have this conversation with women?
Well, accountability, scrutiny and spending time. I mean, part of it is, as I say, having clear obligations to deliver change, and so a CEO is accountable, as is the leader of a political party, to get the results that are needed. It's not a question of, we'll get around to it when we can, or let's have the debate. You've got to deliver on it. And then I think genuinely this could and should be a win-win. I think we've got a culture around paid work, which is very premised on you're always available. It's excluding the reality of family and community life. I think the community is feeling that. And so what we should be doing here, I think, is using this as an opportunity to change the environment for all of us to benefit better here in terms of that balance, the perennial question of the balance between paid work and the rest of your life. And we clearly don't have the right balance being struck here.
No, and certainly one that is continuing to dominate and will as we head towards an election, either late this year, early next year. Look, there are lots of other aspects of this we've got to talk about, and we had other topics to talk about, tax cuts, New Start, the whole lot, but we might have to leave it there because we can't get a hold of Danita. We've lost our link to Canberra.
We'll be back.
Apologies.
We'll come back.
Great to have you there.
All right. Hi, Danita, wherever you are, and thanks for having us in this morning.
Thank you so much, Cassandra.
Thanks.